Welcome in, day oneers, to the Day One Football Podcast. This is episode 18. And once again, we got Day One Big Mike, the Day One Daddy Stephen King, and Anal Bobby, Colin. What's up? Anyways, how are you guys doing? Are you ready to talk some football today?
Yeah, I was also one of the injuries that happened this weekend. I got a little schmangled on Saturday night and slept just completely cocked. So we got a little bit of a neck injury, but we're pushing through. I'm day to day. Steve?
Unfortunately, I don't have an injury. I can't join you on the IR over there. So, no, but I'm, as much as I love talking about football, this is definitely going to be a rough episode due to injuries. So, Colin, why don't you start us off with the injury woes?
Yeah. So before we jump into the nice bloody Sunday we had, we got some. We basically are going to cover some A1 news as always. Then jump to the Have a Day segment we're going to do every week. We just talk the top guys of the week for each position. Then we got the week 3 waiver wire, like guys to add, sell high, buy lows, and absolute stinkers. And then we'll close out the show. So let's jump into that fun injury report. So right off the bat, just a bunch of ACL injuries. So let's get this. Let's start it right away. It's gonna be like a nice 20 minutes just talking about who's injured and who can't play ever again because they're just broken. So we got Saquon Barkley tore his ACL against the Bears. Mike, any thoughts when you watched that happen during that game?
I mean, the Bears are bullies, so they hurt him and hurt Sterling Shepard, I believe. But I'm gonna throw this to Steve because I know he can't wait to get this news out there.
Yeah, so Saquon's actually, I was really high on Saquon this year because he had some injury woes last year, and I was expecting a big bounce back. I thought he was going to compete with CMC for the number 1 overall running back, but as much as it sucks to see him go down, we have Devonta Freeman, who potentially gets signed there, and I've been talking Freeman up this whole offseason, so that's exciting for me. Colin?
Yeah, so he's gonna just pending COVID testing, which I'm sure he'll be okay to go, but he'll be the guy now as a Giant, and can't wait to watch that mess. A lot of check down passes from Danny Fumbles because he sucks. But we'll move on to the next injury. So another knee injury, Raheem Mostert, MCL sprain, likely to miss week 3. They said day to day, but I'm pretty sure it'll probably end up being a miss because that's a pretty tough injury to just like be like, I'm fine, especially when you're moving the way the running backs move. Mike, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers are just really unlucky. They continue to get injured. Nick Bosa went down with an ACL. Their defensive tackle Solomon Thomas went down, and their MRI truck went down. It broke down on the way to the team, so they had to wait for that too. So it's not great times if you're a fan of San Francisco, but we'll get there. I think Mostert will be okay. His production will dip a bit, but nothing too major. Steve, what are you thinking?
So I see that we have a bunch of 49ers in this injury segment. Just wondering why we didn't group them all together and just get the 49ers out of the way, Colin. What were you thinking?
Well, yeah, I was as the injuries came in, I just kept doing like one by one. So yeah, I know the last one there. I'll just throw it in now. Tevin Coleman got a knee injury that will miss multiple weeks. I just saw that like I think yesterday night. I'm like, oh well, there's another injury to add to there. You know what, Steven, you want me to throw in the plane injury too? Plane got hit on the runway, and now he's week to week as well. The San Francisco 49ers plane.
Yeah.
Well,
You forgot one.
yeah.
You forgot the most beautiful player in the NFL, Jimmy Garoppolo, has a high ankle sprain. Now, a high ankle sprain for a quarterback is not a big deal because they don't move laterally much, even though Jimmy G is a great-looking person. I'm sure the injury loves him, and it'll have him back to full form soon. Steve, what are you thinking?
These 3 players in general, it does suck for the 49ers because they had wide receiver issues beforehand. And so their top 2 running backs go down. All of a sudden now we're looking at Jerick McKinnon, who could be a very, very good start this upcoming week. They take on the Giants, so it could be a very, very good start, especially with backup QB Nick Mullins probably going to play here. So if you can, grab your Jerick McKinnons on the waiver wire. Jeff Wilson might not be a bad start anyways because they're going to probably give him the ball at the goal line, and probably stay away from Nick Mullins. So that's my take on the 49ers, Colin.
Yeah. Also, they said he probably won't miss week 3, but the chance he is. Mullins looked good in the past. I remember he played it. I think a game against the Broncos actually beat them. I think it was like 2 years ago. I don't know if Steven remembers that. I remember watching it at Buffalo Wild Wing because I was getting hammered eating some wings. But yeah, like we didn't even mention the other guy that got hurt, Nick Bosa, their best defensive edge. They're like an edge rusher. He also tore his ACL, so he's also out. So it's really just unfortunate. The 49ers are getting taking hits everywhere. But we'll move on to the next guy. We have Paris Campbell. He was carted off. It turned out it was not an ACL tear, but he did injure his MCL and PCL and is out indefinitely. So with that news, I guess I don't know if I want to throw in this name, but I'll say Pittman Jr. did look good in the second half of that game when he got a few more passes. And Zach Pascal got a touchdown. I remember he was relevant here and there last year. I don't know if he'll be a guy now, especially when Ty didn't look, as good as he has in the past. He had a few drops, and he's never been really a drop guy. So I don't know if maybe the connection's off between him and Phillip Rivers, but yeah, definitely to look at Pittman and Pascal in upcoming weeks. Mike.
I agree. There's really the MCLs on one of the sides of the knee and the PCLs on the back of it, so it could take some time. I'll throw it to Steve because Colin basically said it. Pittman Jr. and maybe Pascal. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with both. Pittman Jr. Not so much. I think you're going to see Pascal a little bit more, but the biggest winner here is the tight end, whether it's going to be Mo Alley-Cox, who we saw dominate this past game, or if Jack Doyle comes back from his injury and dominates in the next game. So I think those are the two biggest benefactors from these injuries. But I would say if you need to, Pascal's a decent start. And obviously you have to start TY. You probably grabbed him in the 5th round, 6th round. So I would start TY as well. Colin?
Oh, so now you bring up Mo Alley-Cox after I just erased him from our fantasy waiver wire segment. Guys are chirping him,
Yep.
And now you're like, oh, he might benefit from this. But we'll just put that aside. So yeah, next guy, Tyrod Taylor, chest injury. He got an injection, I guess, for his ribs. Had tough time breathing. Went to the hospital. He was released on further evaluations. Well, that's good. But if he's ready to go, which we don't know if he will be or not, they don't really want to say. But if he is ready, apparently Anthony Lynn wants to go back to him after, Justin Herbert balled out, which is kind of dumb. But it could be a football, it could be the coach just saying it. But he did back it up the next day on Monday. So what do you guys take from that?
Yeah, he was saying that a veteran quarterback gave him the best chance to win. So I tend to agree with him. There will be rookie QBs that will ball out because they weren't prepared for them. It was the Chiefs. Their defense is pretty decent, but I think I agree with him. I think Tyrod will give them the best chance. If teams prepare for him, you know what you're going to get, but I really just don't think that if they prepare for the rookie that he'll be that great. He was more of a Jekyll and Hyde player in college, almost similar to a Mitch Trubisky. So he could come out next week and just throw up a stinker. Steve, what are you thinking?
I think that Justin Herbert's going to ball out next week against Carolina, or this upcoming week, if Tyrod's not there. And I believe Tyrod is going to be out. So Herbert, I think, is going to have a good real life game. I don't know if that's going to translate to fantasy. I wouldn't trust starting him, obviously, in my lineup because, like you guys said, he's a rookie, but he's also going against the Panthers, which is a very, very bad defense. So I'm not a huge fan of Herbert. I watched the game and he looked actually really good. His accuracy was, he placed some balls phenomenally, and I was like, who is this? Like, this is not what he looked like in college for the most part. So, but he had a really good game, and he was running around a lot too. He scored a touchdown on the ground, which helped his fantasy day out. But then he has Tampa Bay and New Orleans after that, and those are two of the better defenses in the league. So if you need a QB to start next week, maybe throw Herbert in against Carolina. But after that, I don't even think he's worth rostering. But I think he will win the job at some point this year. Colin?
Yeah, I'm planning to start him this weekend in my dynasty. So fingers crossed that Anthony Lynn makes the right decision. I think at the end of the day, you look at it too. It's like, I know the Chiefs didn't prepare for him, but like, to just do what he did against the Super Bowl winning team, I mean, respect to him. And also, Anthony Lynn, you punted on the 4th and 1. So don't say the veteran quarterbacks can help you win when you punted on the 4th and 1 in overtime, when you literally just said, hey, here, Chiefs, take the ball. Just get into field goal range and win this game, because we don't want it. When you could easily just ran it in for like a QB draw, or even gave it to, Austin Eckler or something. But regardless, let's move on to those Denver Broncos. So Steven got to watch his team get beat up by the mean Steelers defense, just dominated. But with that came 2 crucial injuries. And the first one was the quarterback, Drew Lock. Shoulder injury, 2 to 6 weeks. They're saying it's an AC joint. I'll push it to Steven first. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's very upsetting because Drew Lock was projected to have potentially have a breakout year, and I was all for it. He didn't really look too comfortable actually so far this year. He made a couple pretty good throws, but ultimately he didn't look what I thought he was going to. Now that might just be the new offensive coordinator coming in, but who knows? But Driscoll, who took over for him, actually balled out a little bit, which surprised me. Put up 22 0.7 fantasy points. So that was pretty good. They just signed, or potentially are going, I don't think he's actually on the roster yet, but Blake Bortles is coming in to fight for the starting job until Drew Lock comes back, which I think could be good. I didn't mind. I don't want him to be the future of the Broncos QB, but come in and have some fun. I don't mind it. I am pretty much writing off this season with Von Miller gone and Sutton gone and Lindsey out for a while and Drew Lock out for a while. So I'd like to see some fun football for once. Mike?
Jeff Driscoll, an underrated rusher, honestly. He's only played 3 games, so obviously it's a little, like, it's a small sample size, but he has 50 yards a game as a quarterback, and he averages 6.86 yards a carry. So maybe if he, beats out the boat, then maybe he's a good QB, I guess. I don't know. It's gross. I'm just gonna let Colin move on to the next one.
All right. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully Blake shows up. We're rooting for him. The construction worker smoking some cigs. Drives his Tesla now around LA. He's a big deal. But we'll move on to the next injury. Very unfortunate. I think Steven touched on a little bit, but Cortland Sutton tore his ACL, and it was weird because I think it came out Monday, and no one really talked about it on Sunday night. I don't know, Steven, you watched the game, right? So did you see anything happen to Sutton? Because I feel like no one talked about it when it happened because they brought it up Monday.
Yeah, so it just looked like he was in some pain. It didn't really look too bad. All we knew coming out of the game was that Sutton hurt his knee, and it could be bad, but we don't know. It could be. It might not be that bad. Nobody really had an idea on what was going to happen, and then it came out yesterday that he tore his ACL and he's out for the year. So that's very unfortunate. The only plus side of Sutton being hurt for anybody is just getting to see these rookies actually get a shot at being top players on the team. Now, that being said, that's on a pretty rough team right now because, half of their starting offense is injured. So it will be fun to see Jerry Jeudy hopefully get a bunch of targets. And I know Noah Fant is going to start balling out. He did last game. He had a really good week. And KJ Hamler, let's see what he can do too. Well, he has the chance. Mike?
Yeah, there is one positive with Cortland, at least tearing it early in the year, is that he will have a better timetable to come back for next year. Now receivers do come back from ACL tears almost pretty easily if they do all the correct steps and there's no complications or anything like that. Allen Robinson did it, and he's an absolute stud on with terrible QB play. So almost a blessing. Obviously, you're losing him for this year, but I don't think the Broncos were going to compete this year, so it's really not that big of a deal, I guess. Colin, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's unfortunate overall. I think you never want to see a guy get injured. So, yeah, it just makes it a little tougher for the Broncos to have a relevant year. So it's unfortunate for Steven because he looks sad in the video I'm looking at right now. He's shaking his head. He looks a little like disappointed. We'll see how they do. I think Judy I think Judy looked good the last 2 weeks. So I think he's now the main guy in that offense with Fant. So I feel like we'll see how he does, but it's going to be a learning process for that team with a young wide receiver core and offense in general. So moving on, Mr. CMC, the Mr. number 1 overall pick, gets a high ankle sprain and is going to miss multiple weeks, around 4 to 6 weeks per report. But Mike got some insider information from a doctor. So Mike, please.
Yeah, there's a couple sports medicine guys that I follow on Twitter and a couple that I watch on YouTube, and they said the average timetable is about 3.6 weeks to get back, and there will only usually be a 10% production drop. Now, McCaffrey did come out and say, I'm not going to be out for that. They gave the 4 to 6 weeks, and he's like, I'm going to attack this like I do everything else. And I mean, he's one of the best running backs in the league. So I trust him to come back even better and hopefully have no production drop. But Steve, what are you thinking here?
I think this just proves that, look at the last couple of years. Remember when David Johnson was the first overall pick or a top 3 pick and then got hurt for the full year in the first game? And then this year you have CMC, who's going to miss potentially 4. I would probably guess he's going to miss 4 games. That's even if it's 3 games, he's the first game back. Probably they're not going to give him the full workload. So I'm going to say he's going to miss 4 games. That's a quarter of the season. And then you have Saquon, who's going to miss the full year. Like this, you can never predict this stuff, and it's crazy to think about. And Mike Davis didn't have a bad game when he was filling in for CMC. So I'm not a fan of the Panthers offense anyways. I don't own any of them. They are apparently going off. Like Teddy's in the top 5 for passing yards, and Robbie Anderson is going off, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. So it does suck. This has been a really bad year for top end talent. So, Colin?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too when you think like all these guys are like, oh, we're in the best shape of my life, but most of these injuries have been like ligaments, and you can't train or like work out ligaments really. It's mostly just like like there's been like real bone breaks or anything. It just shows that like anything can happen, right? Just quick little turn, and it's really it just shows that football is it's a very fun sport, but it's also very dangerous and scary especially for these guys to put their lives on the line every day. So next guy, we go to the LA Rams. We got Steven's boy again, so just keeps making Steven get more sadder and sadder. Cam Akers, rib injury. He's now day-to-day. Steven, any thoughts?
I need to stop talking up people because every time I talk somebody up, they're just like my whole Broncos team is in shambles right now. So everybody that I've talked about it's not been good. Cam Akers, at least it's only day-to-day. This backfield is a mess. Malcolm Brown goes off in week 1. Now he's hurt. Cam Akers has been injured in both games, so he's limited snaps in both. And then you have Henderson, who actually had a really good game last game, But if all three are going in somewhat healthy, then who knows what's going to happen? Like this is the worst backfield right now. This is probably the hardest backfield to own because you have no idea what's going on. So, Mike, we'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, I believe it was rib cartilage or something that he hurt, which is a bit weird. But he is. I expect him to be out this week, and be back next week, and then make Daryl Henderson almost not worthwhile to spend a bunch of fab on this week. But if you really need to win this week, maybe go after him. But I think Malcolm Brown is. They were expecting him to play this week, but I'm not sure. Colin, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's like Steven said, it's a committee. It's kind of scary. I wouldn't want to touch any of it really. Malcolm Brown, I think the biggest thing taking away from that surge that you just mentioned, Mike, how you said he's broke his finger. I don't think I'd want to own a Malcolm Brown right now, just because, yeah, he's part of that committee to begin with. But if you break a finger on a hand that you're carrying a ball, that your whole job is not to fumble the ball, I just feel like I wouldn't want to take that risk in a playing position. Now, I will say Daryl Henderson, I think you guys said like he didn't look great. He had that one explosive play where he broke off. 12 carries for, I think he was like 86 yards, and he averaged like 6.8 yards a carry, something ridiculous like that. But he was in the passing work, and he's looked good in the preseason. He looked good in Hard Knocks. I don't know. I would take the risk. I wouldn't play him. I don't think it's very smart to be like, oh, I'm gonna go all in on this guy and pick him up and play him immediately. I like to give him a week on the bench, see how he does. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like it's a weird backfield, and Cam Akers hasn't looked great. Will he still take over the job at some point this year? Who knows? But it's been a learning process for him through the first 2 weeks. Any final thoughts on the Rams backfield before we move on?
Yuck.
Yeah, good.
I agree.
Good stuff.
I agree.
All right, so we'll touch on one more injury to an offensive player before we move on to defensive players. I know some people use defensive players in fantasy leagues, so we'll just touch on a few. I think we touched on Bosa already, but before that, is it CJ Uzomah?
Uzomah.
CJ, right?
Uzomah.
He ruptured his Achilles Thursday night against my Browns. And after that, it's really unfortunate. That's a really tough injury to come from too, just like a ACL. But Drew Sample showed that he can play a valuable role to the young Joe Burrow. Mike, any thoughts?
No, it's the Bengals. They stink.
Okay.
Steve?
Yeah, the Bengals really stink. But if you really need a tight end, and there's a lot of breakout tight ends this year, so I'm not going to tell you to pick up Sample because I think there's probably better people on the waiver wire right now. Jonnu Smith should be out there. Depending on how deep your league is, Noah Fant might even be out there. Who knows? Logan Thomas. Some really, really good guys. Dalton Schultz. We're going to bring up some of these guys a little bit later, but Drew Sample, if you're really desperate, if it's a deep league and you need a tight end, he's probably going to get 5 to 6 receptions and like 40 yards, and you have to bank on a touchdown. So if you need him, get him, but probably not worth it. Colin?
Yeah, plus it was very small sample size.
I get it. Sample.
Ooh. So yeah, the last thing we got to touch on before we move on to some football news, even though we only have one real thing to talk about, but defensive players. So I kind of brought it up a second ago. We had talked about Nick Bosa already. They also lost Solomon Thomas and Anthony Barr, the linebacker from the Vikings. Mike, any thoughts on the defensive players? I know both you and Steven play in a league with defensive players, so I think you guys will be easier to talk on this.
It's definitely an interesting way to play with IDP settings. Now, Solomon Thomas, defensive linemen don't really get that many points, so it's not a big hit to many teams, but it could be to some. It depends on the settings you play on, but for us, it's mostly linebackers and safeties that really get points. And Anthony Barr, I don't honestly know much about him. I really only know about my guys because only have three. I have Roquan Smith, Jesse Bates, and forget who my defensive lineman is, but it really doesn't matter. They don't get that many points. But Steve, are you thinking anything with IDP?
Not IDP specifically, but people play with defenses in most of their home leagues, anyways. So it's just something to keep an eye on. If you see an Anthony Barr go out, and you already know the Vikings defense has been pretty bad this year, do not touch the Vikings defense, even if they're playing against a really bad offense, because their defense stinks. But yeah, it's just keep an eye on specific players, because you'll see, like, if you look at, the Panthers and Luke Kuechly retiring, like, that's a big deal. You don't probably not going to touch the Panthers, even though they do stink. But just keep an eye on their superstar defensive players, and that's all I can say about players. And by the way, just got a notification. Devonta Freeman now officially 1 year, $3 million on the Giants. Let's get it.
Let's go.
Big pickup. There you go, official. He says he likes the Giants because it has more opportunity. I don't know about that. That team kind of stinks.
It's up to 3 million. I lied. It's only up to 3 million. It's not a 3 million. Okay.
Incentives.
There we go.
I mean, that offensive line was absolute god awful. So he was on a good team and kind of underperformed. What are we really thinking that he's going to do?
There's going to be a lot of checkdowns to him.
So RB 16 end year, Colin.
I'll pine bet that. You want to do that?
No,
I don't want to do that one. No, I don't want to do that one either.
That's gross.
Okay. So we'll move on to the other. I guess we'll just call that a football news segment. So the next one is Mr. Leonard Fournette claps back after Mike and I bashed him last week. Guy went off. Mike, any thoughts?
He still stinks.
He does stink.
Steve?
Right.
Because I'm actually a Leonard Fournette fan, unlike you two fools, he had a really big week, but it was actually, I'm pretty sure, I didn't watch this game, but I watched a highlight of Fournette just trucking it down the field. Was it like 50-yard touchdown or something like that? Like half of his yard totals came in one play, which is very Leonard Fournette of him to do. So, I'd keep an eye on him. If you need to, you can flex him. I still think he's going to be the goal line guy because he's a monster. And Rojo fumbled in that game, and that's why Fournette got most of the carries after that fumble. So Bruce Arians does not like fumbling, and Rojo doesn't have hands. So I would say the Broncos are up next for them, and then the Chargers, and then the Bears. 3 pretty good defenses. So just keep an eye on them. Maybe as much as you guys said he was droppable last week, I'm going to say that he's probably a buy low after these next couple games. Buy him really low for nothing, and then keep him on your bench for the playoffs, because he's going to go off against the Vikings, Atlanta, and Detroit.
I guess you mean Ronald Jones, but Colin?
Yeah, so 12 attempts, 103 rushing yards, 8.6 a carry, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And the thing that Fournette always does well, and I don't think anyone really talks about it, doesn't really, I mean, I wouldn't say well, but he does it, and it helps in a lot of like formats, is he catches the ball out of the backfield, which is weird because the guy's like, it just seems like he's a brick. Looks like he wouldn't be a guy that would catch the ball, but he caught 4 passes on 5 targets for only 13 yards, but still in a PPR or a half PPR format, that's a nice little like incentive to have. So he definitely is I think he is the RB1 on that team moving forward, which is just, puke. But Rojo didn't look great, and he's going to sit in the doghouse again with Bruce Arians. So let's move on to that have a day segment. So once again, like last week, we'll touch on the top 10 of each position, and each of us will just talk on one guy that we really liked in the top 10 and, are going to bounce on for moving forward. So, let's go off the bat. So some QB play. So we got Dak Prescott, number 1, Cam Newton, number 2, Josh Allen, number 3, Mr. Unlimited, number 4, Kyler Murray, number 5, Matt Ryan, number 6, Patrick Mahomes, number 7, Ryan Tannehill at number 8, Joey B at number 9, and Fitzmagic at number 10. Let's give it to Steven. Who are you picking?
I talked up Josh Allen recently, and as much as I would love to talk about how much they're letting him throw the ball, and he's actually somewhat being accurate this year, I'm going to go with Ryan Tannehill, and that's because I think he's going to be a great stream for this week. He's playing against the Minnesota Vikings, and we have talked trash pretty frequently on their defense, and specifically their defensive backs. So I'm saying start Tannehill this week, but also you have to remember that he plays Pittsburgh week 4, Buffalo week 5. So those are probably not starting him there. Um, and you also have to remember that Tannehill tossed 4 touchdowns this past game, and Derrick Henry hasn't scored. Has he? I don't think he scored at all this year, has he? Somebody stat check me there. But yeah, so
Yeah, scored.
yeah, so that's gonna happen eventually. So just keep Tannehill in check. He's playing really well so far this year, but definitely start him next game. Keep an eye on him. I wouldn't start him against Pittsburgh or the Bills, but definitely rosterable for sure. Mike.
Who am I gonna pick? Let's see. I think I will go with the Stallion, Josh Allen. I said this year he was definitely better than Sam Darnold, and I'm getting proven right consistently. 400 yards passing. I'm sure no one actually saw that. I believe he was on pace for 5,600 yards. I believe Steve, you brought that up.
I think when I did it, it was just over 5,700.
Yeah. So, I mean, did anyone see Josh Allen getting anywhere close to that? No. No one saw it at all. He threw for 4 touchdowns. Diggs looks like an absolute stud. We'll talk about him later. And I mean, he only ran the ball 4 times. Usually he's up around 10 or 11, much like Cam, but maybe Josh Allen improved his passing, boys. Maybe the rest of the league has to watch out. Colin?
Guy just throwing bombs downfield. Looks great. I'm going to pick the rookie, Mr. Joey B. And it's just volume-wise, like against the Browns, he threw 61 attempts, second most by a rookie quarterback. Now, is he going to do that every week? No, not at all. But he showed that he could do it and ball out still. Like, that line's terrible, but he chucked that ball 61 times, made 37 completions for 3 touchdowns and 16 yards. So, I mean, he did technically ball out for that. And he also, rushed. He had a little bit of rushing ability too, ran 7 times because he had to, because that line was just pushing through and just dumbing him. So he looked great, 28 points. Can't complain with that. And, another thing on top of it is he plays the Philadelphia Eagles this week. And I don't know if you've watched the Eagles the first 2 weeks, but that defense is gross. That just team in general sucks. And I think he's going to have a great week. And then if you go into the next week, he plays the Jags. And the Jags have been kind of like a Cinderella story, but their defense isn't that great either after they traded like everyone. So I think the next few weeks, this guy could be a beast, and I think he'll be in the Have a Day segment next week, and I think he will be the week after that. So I'm going Joey B, and I'm slamming that down. Rookie is going to dominate this week. Now, let's move on to that RB section. So rolling off number 1, Mr. Aaron Jones. Big day just like against the Lions, just destroyed them. Then we got Alvin Kamara with new Lauren Breeze just checking down to him every 2 seconds. Then we got Nick Chubb. Oh, my boy, Nick Chubb. I didn't think he was number 3 on the list, but I am pumped for that. Definitely going to, definitely picking him for this segment. But then we got Leonard Fournette. Yuck. Then we got CMC, Kareem Hunt. Yes. David Montgomery, James Robinson, Zeke, and Darrell Henderson at number 10. Mike, you go first.
I mean, everyone knows exactly who I'm taking, and it's my boy David Montgomery. 5.1 yards a carry, a vast improvement on, I believe, it was like 3.6 last year. The line actually looked like they were moving people for once. James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, probably the best center guard duo in the league, and honestly, the line looked pretty decent. no rushing touchdowns, but where he made his money is in the receiving game. 3 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. Trubisky literally created his touchdown. I loved it. I love to see it. The Giants stink, so I mean he was supposed to do good, but I love him the rest of the season. They have the Falcons next week. He's going to go off against them because their defense is Swiss cheese. So, Steve, who's your guy?
Okay, so Mike, I was actually I was like I know you wanted Montgomery, but I thought you were going to go Kamara because of how much you needed him in fantasy on the weekend.
I, I thought about it, but there's a bear there. I gotta take him.
That's fair. That's I guess if there was a Bronco here, which there probably won't be a Bronco in the Have a Day segment except for Fant, but he's I don't even think he made it this week. But that's a tough one. I really want to talk about Aaron Jones because he put up the most fantasy points this week in total, and this is just classic Aaron Jones where he just goes off for a 40-point week. I think he did it a couple times last year too, where he just went off for just let's see. I want to say he had a 45-point week last year. He had a 38-point week last year and multiple 20+ point weeks last year. That's what Aaron Jones does. He finished as the RB2 last year. I don't. He's being so undervalued because they drafted a running back, and I just want you guys to know, like, he had 18 rushing attempts still, and there's 2 other guys that are getting opportunities too. He had 8 targets last week. So I think this guy's going to keep going off all year. He's one of these guys that he plays the Saints, and if he has a down game, which I don't think he will because he gets used in the passing game, and the Saints looked like poop last week, as in Monday. But if he does have a down game, I'm gonna try to buy him as low as possible because this guy just keeps surprising me every single week, and I think he's gonna have an amazing year with CMC out, with Saquon out. Aaron Jones right now is my pick to be RB1 on the year. So I'm going to pass it to Colin, and I'm going to let Colin, just because he can, I'm going to let him talk about both of his Browns here. We're going to break the rules. You get 2 people, Colin.
Well, Steven, you read my mind because I was going to talk about both of them. So, we played the Bengals. So, I mean, it's pretty much a wash game. These guys are both going to dominate. But I really like the way they're using them. And I think we talked about it I've talked about it multiple times over the month of August that Kevin Stefanski is a run-heavy offense, and I think that's the way they want to implement the team moving forward. I think week 1 was you're playing arguably one of the top 3 team in the league where they just, destroyed them. But after that, you showed that they offensively anyways, they showed on Thursday that they're going to be, run, pass, whatever. And, it worked out really well because, Nick Chubb is that bruiser. He did his job really well. And then he had Kareem Hunt, who in the pass catching role, in the fourth quarter when he actually started running the ball against them, like it just showed what they could do with him. Like, 1 receiving touchdown for Hunt and also 1 on the ground. And then Nick Chubb, just bruising his way through 2 touchdowns. So I think it shows that they're both can be relevant. And we've seen it in the past with 2 teams doing this, like Alvin Kamara and Ingram, multiple years where like Kamara was the pass catching guy and Ingram was the ground and pound guy. So I think it's both showing that they are. And I think Nick Chubb right now is the ranked 10 in standard and 14 in PPR, and Hunt's ranked 9 in PPR and standard. So, I mean, both have value and both are startable every week in and week out. So I think it'll be fine. There might be a couple games where there's game script problems for Chubb, but for the most part, I'm very happy with how they looked. And they play the Washington football team this week. So I think both of them, again, will have a very good day because that team's not very good. So I'm excited. I'm pumped. I love them both. And I don't want to hear anyone slandering either of the guys. Let's move on. So, wide receivers. We got Calvin Ridley, number 1. Stephon Diggs, number 2. Scary Terry, number 3. The old man, Julian Edelman, number 4. Mike Evans, number 5. Tyreek Hill, number 6. Dante Johnson, number 7. DeAndre Hopkins, number 8. DJ Moore, number 9. And Mr. DK, 1 route, Metcalf. Mike, you can go first.
I mean, everyone knows that I love DJ. I love Terry. Love Stephon. But I'm going with the old man, Julian Edelman. Basically because he basically won me a matchup, um, and really pissed off my opponent. Uh, in a PPR league, Julian Edelman is actually startable and he's great. Most weeks, I mean, 8 receptions, 179 yards. That's ridiculous. He looked absolutely exhausted at the end of the game. He could barely run, but he was still catching passes. He almost scored a game-winning touchdown. Cam could not. But I mean, this guy's a great receiver, and if you can somehow get him from a guy who thinks that like he's not exciting, he's not a great player, then do it because it's worth it. Steve, what are you thinking?
Do you want me to talk on Edelman, or do you want me to just go off on somebody actually good at football?
Do you,
Ooh.
bud?
Oh,
Ooh.
no, Edelman's great. Obviously, nobody expected almost 180 yards out of him. And can you imagine if he actually put a touchdown up on that stat line? That would be absolutely insane. So good for Edelman. Obviously, he's not going to be a superstar every week, but in PPR leagues, he should be startable all the time. One person looking at this, you see a bunch of top, like these guys are all expected to finish in this top area pretty much except for like Deontay Johnson. He's the only one that's just like he's the only one that wouldn't be a top 10 other than Edelman, who I wouldn't project to be there. But Deontay Johnson went off, and it wasn't just Deontay. I'm pretty sure they had a couple guys. Who's the rookie, right? Didn't he have a big game too?
I think Claypool had
Mr. Mapletron.
Yeah, Canadian boy,
God.
big Canadian boy. Juju had a decent game too, and the Broncos are a decent defense. So Deontay, I don't know what to expect from him throughout the year. I know that he was riding up draft boards, and I wasn't too high on him because I thought James Washington and Claypool were both going to take some targets away from him. But he looked pretty good this game. I watched it. I cried a little bit, but good for him. And if he has a couple down games, I'm still gonna think that he's gonna finish in the top 30 by the end of the season. So I definitely had to reevaluate him after watching him play and torch my Broncos. Colin?
Yeah, and they're saying that he's going to be the AB role. So I mean, he's doing his job. Great game. So I'll go with Stephon Diggs here, and only because I mean, I don't think he was going to be elite when he left. You know, he was playing behind mostly. Like he had a very accurate quarterback and Kirk Cousins last couple of years, and he also was technically the wide receiver too. So he didn't have to go up against maybe the most the top corners of each team or secondary options. It mostly was Thielen's problem, but through 2 weeks, this guy's balled out, and it's crazy. Like 8 receptions, 153 yards, 19.1 yards a catch, and 1 touchdown. Like the guy's elite. He's definitely going to be. I think he's worthy of being. Talent wise, he's a top 10 wide receiver. Everyone's been talking about that for years, and now he's showing it finally as the wide receiver 1 on this team. And it looks like him and Josh Allen are just connected like every time. They look like they're great, like a match made in heaven, because he's a long bomb guy and Diggs is figuring it out. So hopefully he continues, because it's fun to watch, and no one circles the wagon like the Buffalo Bills, right, Mike?
Oh, baby. Let's go.
All right, so let's move on to this tight end segment. So with that, Mike gets to see his top favorite tight end, Mr. Higbee, number 1. Mike Gesicki, number 2. Jonnu Smith, number 3. Darren Waller, number 4. And Mr. Jordan Reed, number 5. Mike's going to say Higbee. So, Steven, you go first.
I don't really want any of these guys because I'm going to leave Jonnu Smith for Colin, because I feel like that's where he's going to go. And Gesicki, I'll talk on Gesicki. I don't mind Gesicki. He won. I wouldn't say he won me this week in one of my leagues, but he definitely helped out with the big 23 fantasy points. Usually tight ends, I talked about this before. Usually tight ends, you have to rely on touchdowns to have big weeks. And if you look at Mike Gesicki 8 receptions for 130 yards. He was putting up 13 points in a standard league regardless, which is huge for a tight end. So I think Gesicki's going to ball out this year. He plays Jacksonville next game. Good matchup. So I'm going to say if he's on the waiver wire, grab Gesicki. You can start him, especially if you have Kittle or if one of your tight ends goes down. Huge Gesicki guy this year, and Fitzmagic is just gonna ball out with Gesicki. We're gonna jump the mic here.
I mean, everyone and their mother knows exactly who I'm going with, and that's Tyler Higbee. I said he was going to ball out. Well, there we go. 3 touchdowns, nothing new. No, he definitely was part of the game script. 5 receptions, 54 yards, 3 tutters. I mean, I said he was great. I don't think he'll really have another week like that. It was pretty efficient. He only had 5 targets. But he averages around 4.5 targets a game this year. So he's definitely worth, if he's on the waiver wire, pick him up. If you play in a deep league, you better have him. You better have been listening to the show and better have got him. But I think he balled out on a lot of people's benches this week, and a lot of people were really pissed off. I know one certain manager was, because that probably would have won him the week. But Colin, your guy.
Yeah, I was looking to touch on something with Higbee. I'm pretty sure he outsnapped Gerald Everett. I think Everett only has 20% of the snap carry count right now. So Higbee's just been on the field a lot, and I mean, he looked very good. Jonnu Smith is obviously my guy. The guy looked great both weeks. Now he's had a touchdown at least 2 this past week, but he's obviously Tannehill's favorite guy to throw to right now. Granted, that offense in general looks really good. Derrick Henry looks pretty mediocre, so I'm not going to touch on him, obviously, but throwing the ball, Tannehill is one of the most accurate quarterbacks over the past 2 years, 75% yesterday. So it goes to show, and, with that play action type of offense they play as well, the 2 tight ends, so Smith gets to move into passing routes, and I think overall it just shows that he's been his favorite target, especially around this red zone. And with AJ Brown not playing right now, I think will he be back this week, Mike?
I believe so. I will quick look it up.
I have nothing on him right now. He's still listed as out, and I haven't had an update since Sunday.
So see if he's out for sure, I think it's an immediate start, because this guy's just gonna ball out. He's the tight end number 1 and tight end 3 in PPR. So the guy's just been so good these first 2 weeks. And I think he's going to continue it, because everyone's been talking on this guy up all summer, saying he's dark horse. He looked good in those workout photos. He looks like a beast. So I'm excited to see what he can do moving forward. And I think he will be relevant throughout the whole year. But yeah, if AJ Brown is definitely not out this next couple of weeks, he's just going to continue to be starting, because he's worth it.
AJ Brown has been limited at practice, so he might be back this week. But I honestly can't say. But that's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and it also honorable mention. It's kind of funny that Jordan Reed's there. Guy had a great week, and I guess with no wide receivers, I mean, that's gonna be their favorite target moving forward. He can still catch the ball as long as he stays healthy, and he showed it 7 receptions. So let's move on to that waiver wire section.
Hey, before we move on, how high are you on Jonnu Smith now this year, Colin? Do you think he's gonna finish as a top 5?
I want to say yes.
Mike, what about you? Do you think Higbee will finish in the top 5?
I would love to say yes, but Higbee's always been almost inconsistent.
Okay, well, let me ask this.
I'm gonna say top 10 for sure.
Let me ask this: who's gonna finish higher, Jonnu Smith or Tyler Higbee?
I'm gonna probably go with Jonnu Smith. I like Jonnu Smith because they actually give him carries too, which is very interesting for a tight end.
I was so ready to pine bet you there. I was so ready. I was going to punch that button so quick.
No.
Okay,
I wouldn't do a pint bet like
Mike,
that
come on.
because Johnny Smith is an
I
athlete.
was trying to set up a pint bet, a three-way pint bet because right now Johnny is sitting 1, Noah Fant sitting 3, and Tyler Higby sitting 4. So we were gonna go pint bet between the three.
I'll still go a
I'll
pint bet, Steven. Do you think he's going to be high? I think Smith will be higher than Fant.
Mike, do you want to jump in with anybody other than Travis Kelce?
let me see.
I'll give you Waller. I'll even give you Waller, and he's projected to be a top 5.
Tell you what, yeah, I'll take Waller. If you're gonna give me
I'll give you
Waller, I'll
Waller.
take him.
I'll give Colin. You good with that? We'll give him Waller.
Yeah, so we're going to be giving him a pint, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I was just gonna take like Mark Andrews.
Oh, that's not fair. Mark Andrews is better than Waller.
All right,
What about Zach? Take Zach Ertz.
No, God, no. That's awful.
What take Gesicki?
Yeah, that's
Mikey
a good one.
G? Yeah, I'll take Mikey G.
Okay, so
That's fair.
Mikey G's sitting at 27.5, so he's sitting 7 points behind Johnny right now.
Yeah.
I can't wait to be in Stratford some point this summer and have to sit down in Krabby Joe's or something wherever you guys have there.
The schooner.
And
Hey,
have to give him
Crowley
a buck-
Jones is there.
and
Yeah.
They have
I have to
scooters,
give him there'd be a nice picture with him with a schooner next to me and Steven when we lose this bet.
Man, he has Gesicki. I have no fan. You, Johnny Smith. Put it on the board.
Put him on the board.
Woo! All right, let's go week 3 waiver wire. So this one's just going to be a bunch of guys we're going to list off. I'm going to say the percentage that are owned. I don't know if we really want to talk on each one. Probably not. But, I mean, we'll just kind of touch on a few. So number 1 on this list, we got Dalton Schultz, 2% owned. He had a really good game with the Cowboys this past week. Number 2 on the list, Mike Davis. He's 4% owned right now. Currently projected to be the starting running back for the Panthers now that CMC is out. Had a very productive day once CMC was taken out of the game. Darrell Henderson had a very good game as well. Broke off, caught some balls, 22% owned. Michael Pittman Jr., 15% owned. He is in line to be maybe the top option, but with Pascal and TY, we'll see. Number 5, Russell Gage, again, had a very productive second week, outproduced Julio Jones. Number 6, Jerick McKinnon with Coleman and Moser likely to miss the next couple of weeks. He looked great on his 3 carries. Some might say electric 3 carries, 77 yards, and we'll see how he goes moving forward as the starting running back for that team. KJ Hamler, 1% owned. He did get some carries on the ground and also caught a couple balls. He looks like he'll be the wide receiver 2 as an option since Cortland Sutton's injured. Jalen Rieger returns from injury, 30% owned. We'll see how he does with Mr. Wentz since he looks not great. Keelan Cole, 3% owned. He's dominated for the Jags past 2 weeks. He's been their main target over Chark and guys like Laviscus. Myles Gaskin, 15% owned. He is the RB1 on the Dolphins, and I think you can basically just throw that up on the board now because Howard and Breida have not been great the first 2 weeks. Drew Sample, 1% owned. He looked great in the Thursday night game once Uzama missed. And then Devontae Freeman, who just got signed as we broke it on the show, 11% owned. And he is now the starting running back for the New York Giants. Mike, leave it to you.
All right. 2 guys I am not touching is number 1 is Devontae Freeman. That line sucks.
Boo.
The Giants suck. Sorry to rain on your parade, Steve, but
cheer.
The other one is Mike Davis. I am not touching this guy. This guy stinks. His next couple matchups while CMC's out, the Chargers, bad. The Cardinals, bad as in a bad matchup. The Falcons, okay. And then Chicago, and say if they lean on him for the game after that, it's New Orleans. No, thank you. I am not touching him. I'm not touching Bonafon. I am not touching any of those running backs at all. A guy that I would pick up would be, I think it would be Myles Gaskin. I previously said not to touch this Miami backfield. I mean, he had 7 rushes for 46 yards, carrying the rock at 6.6 a carry last week. He had 7 targets, 6 receptions, 36 yards. I mean, That's not bad if you're playing the PPR or half PPR. Like that's 11
Definitely,
points in a
definitely good flex
half
play.
PPR. Yeah, it if you like, I mean, everyone is injured right now, so if you need a guy to throw in your flex, Miles Gaskin is actually decent, and I love Jarek McKinnon, but I've already said that previously. So, Steve, here, guys.
So all of these guys are terrible except for Devonta Freeman.
Ooh,
I'm just gonna
his
throw
favorite player.
I'm just gonna throw that out there. I don't want any of these guys except for Devonta Freeman. And let me tell you why. Because I own Devonta Freeman too much for him to fail. So no, so I don't know. This is a tough list because I'm not huge on Russell Gage, but he's produced enough that he plays the Bears and their team stinks, so they have to throw the ball. Um, I'm not touching Darrell Henderson because the backfield is too crowded. I'll start there because that's just an easy one for me. He's already 22% owned. But I'm not spending. He's going to be, if you have Fab, he's going to cost too much, in my opinion, for a guy that you might get one or two decent weeks out of throughout the full season.
Well, he's had decent weeks already, even just with them there. I believe he had. I'm just gonna pull it up. I believe he had a couple decent weeks that
Who are we talking
he
about?
could have. Jarek McKinnon, is that who you're talking about?
Talk about Darrell Henderson.
Darrell
Okay,
Henderson. Oh,
try.
sorry, my bad. I misheard you.
I
That's
was
my
going to
bad.
say he had Darrell Henderson.
He had one decent
Darrell
week.
Henderson had a big week last week because the rest of the backfield was injured, and I'm not going to spend a quarter to 50% of my fab on a guy that's going to have one or two decent weeks in the season, and we're not going to know when it's going to happen. So you're just going to have to blindly play him and hope for the best. So I'm not high on Henderson. Still a big Akers fan. As much as I don't want Akers right now either, I think Malcolm Brown is the guy to own. But Akers and Henderson are both gonna. It's just bad. It's just bad. Uh, Dalton Schultz is another one. I think he had one really big game, but I don't believe in the talent throughout the full year. He's not as good as Blake Jarwin, and I wasn't a huge Blake Jarwin fan to begin with. I think there's just too many mouths to feed in Dallas, and I think when you're going to see him game scripted out because they needed him last game, and that's why he blew up last game was because they had to throw the ball, and he was always open because everybody else was being covered. CD, Gallup, Amari Cooper, and Zeke were all just being smothered, which they weren't actually. It's just Dak loves tight ends for some reason. I'm just not huge on Dalton Schultz, so we'll just go that. Don't buy him. There's other tight ends out there. We've already listed so many tight ends this episode. Find somebody better because there are many better. And Colin, we'll jump to you.
Yeah, I'll touch on Keelan Cole. I think he looks really good in the first 2 weeks, and Minshew looks like he likes him a lot. Just overall, he is the wide receiver 15 right now in standard, and in PPR he's 17. Had 5 catches, 5 receptions week 1 and a touchdown, and week 2 he had 6 receptions on 7 targets and another touchdown. So I don't know if you'd consider it touchdown dependent. I mean, that does help his fantasy outlook as he didn't have a lot of yardage. He had 47 the first week and 58 the second week, but they're playing Miami this week and Cincinnati. I feel like he's going to have a couple good weeks, and I think there's a reason to roster him at least. I wouldn't play him right away, but he's been dominant 2 weeks in a row. And I really like Pittman Jr. I like him a lot in a dynasty more than like a redraft or like a. I mean, he wouldn't be on the waiver wire in a dynasty, but just saying, I think he will play a role moving forward. I think the guy is just a monster. He's 6'4". I think he's 220. He's a big body. He's a young receiver. I think he's going to have some touchdowns in the moving forward. And they're talking about him being the guy as the Colts number wide receiver 1 in a couple of years. Maybe next year when T.Y. is probably not there. So it'll be fun to see him. Let's see how he produces now as a wide receiver 2 potentially. I mean, Pascal's more of a slot receiver, so I think that's gonna be the 3 guys. But I think he'll have a role. And I'll touch on Gage again. I think we talked about him. He was on the our waiver wire week after week 1, pickup for week 2. And again, Matt Ryan, he's going to throw the ball. He's going to ball out. He throws touchdowns. That's what the Falcons do because they have a terrible defense. It's going to be a shootout every game. And I think he caught 4 on 6 targets and another touchdown. So I mean, I think he has relevancy, and again, easy option is a flex option, and I would just look at that, especially because I don't know. I think they said that Julio did end up having like a little bit of a hamstring issue. I don't know if that will continue going forward, but it's something to mention, and it's going to be interesting to see how they plan to utilize Gage more and Ridley, since Ridley, is such an elite wide receiver as well. But any more thoughts, you guys?
I'm good.
Go Devonta Freeman.
Boo. Okay, so let's move on to the final segment. The three for we got some sell high, 3 guys, 3 buy lows, and 3 absolute stinkers. So let's go with sell highs first. Mike.
So our sell highs include James Robinson being the number 12 running back in both PPR and standard. Jonnu Smith, Colin's boy, Robbie Anderson, Ryan Tannehill, Lenny Fournette, and Corey Davis. I'll choose to talk about James Robinson, and I will choose to say not to sell him. He looks like the real deal in Jacksonville, and he's on a cheap deal, so they will keep him. I'm not going to sell on him right now. I think he's a flex play, possibly a starter, depending on your running back situation. But I think I'm going to keep. I think I'm going to keep him. But I mean, you can probably sell him for a decent penny in a redraft league. Probably sell him for maybe an early second in a dynasty league. But for me, I'd rather just take him and use them. But Steve, who's your guy?
So just to touch on James Robinson right now, he is balling out, but you do have to remember that he was an undrafted free agent, so they don't have the draft capital to keep him around if he does slow down at all. So that's just if you're looking in a redraft, I would say maybe keep him, see what happens. But in dynasty, I would say if you can somehow swindle a first round pick out of him, I would smash the accept button on that trade. So that's so if you can sell high for a first rounder right now because somebody's desperate, definitely do it.
I agree with if you get a first round pick for him, take it. I don't want to sell him, but I mean I'll never pass that up.
Also, quickly,
yeah, go ahead.
You got to think about Armstead coming back in probably a week, and Ozigbo. So I know. I'm not saying like they're just gonna give him the job back, but there's 2 guys that aren't technically there right now that they had higher on the depth chart before week 1. So something to mention just moving forward as well.
I want to sell Corey Davis as high as possible right now because we all know that it's not going to last. And Mike actually has him rostered in a dynasty league right now, and
I do. And no one wants.
I think you might be able to. I think you might be able to get rid of him this week. He plays against Minnesota. If he scores if you look at what he did in week 1, he had 100 yards receiving. Yeah. Great game. Looked like he was an actual good wide receiver.
There is one.
This past game,
there is one issue though.
Yeah.
The one issue is that all those guys listen to this podcast, so let's just
just do it before it comes out.
All right.
Yeah, do it like tonight.
I'll
like right now on the pod.
Do it right now on the pod. And so if you look at the first game, like I said, 100 yards receiving, he looked good. This past game, he had 3 receptions for 36 yards. That looked like a Corey Davis game. He saved it with a touchdown. And like I said, Derrick Henry hasn't scored yet. You're not going to see Tannehill throw for 4 touchdowns in a game very often. Sell your Corey Davis right now because he's going to be scoring 3 to 6 points for the next 5 games in a row. Maybe not in this Minnesota game because it's Minnesota, but then he has Pittsburgh and Buffalo. And then they have Cincinnati, who's been mediocre this year, and Chicago, Baltimore. They have some pretty rough matchups later on in the season. Sell Corey Davis high right now because he's going to be terrible. Colin?
I'm looking at a trade option right now. Should I move James Robinson and potentially Zach Ertz for a first and a second? Would you do that?
Who is your tight end?
Jonnu Smith.
No, I think you can get. I think you can get more.
Yeah.
Think I can get more?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Should I add another pick?
Maybe add a depth piece at running back if you can.
I don't know. The guy's pretty shit at depth. He has Tariq Cohen, so I mean, yuck.
I would say Cohen's a good flex piece if you need him.
Yeah, yeah. I've sent my first trade for Corey Davis out. It is to Steve.
What about
It is laughable.
What about Alexander Madison? Because I have Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I'd do that.
You would do a first and a second in Madison for James Robinson and Zach Ertz.
Like I would send that out. Yes.
Yeah.
Like you would want the return that I'm getting for Zach Ertz and
Zach Ertz for a first, I think, is decent, right?
And then Madison in a second for James Robinson.
Yeah, I do that.
That's solid.
This is a dynasty, right?
This is the dynasty that you and I are in, Steven.
I would. Is it to me? Are you sending this to me?
No, you don't have Madison.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
The guy does need the guy. This is the CMC owner, and he needs a running back.
Okay. By the way,
he also needs a tight
Mike
end.
just sent me a trade. Robert Woods for Corey Davis. I'm going to accept that.
I would too. So I said it's laughable.
I countered with Corey Davis for nothing, and if Mike actually accepts it, then I'm just going to drop Corey Davis.
That's actually a pretty good trade.
Okay, but all right. Let's move on here.
Let's hear about the trades.
Okay, so let's move on to. Did I just talk about a high? I'll sell. No, I don't want to sell any of these guys. Let's move on. Jonnu Smith, I'm keeping. He's my guy. So let's do the buy lows. Let's go. We got some Joe Mixon. We got Gallup. We got CMC in a redraft. We got Alan Lazard, Steven's boy. DJ Chark, AJ Green, who had 13 targets, only caught 3 balls. Granted, the targets weren't that great if you watched the actual game. Also, Denzel Ward locked him down. But we'll jump to Mike first. Who you want to talk on?
I'm just going to mention 2 guys real quick, and it was AJ Green. 13 targets for anyone is a great sign. They will eventually get on the same page. And then it's CMC. If you can somehow get someone like devastated by these injuries, thinking that he's going to stink, take him right now because he'll come back and he'll be fine. I did see on Twitter that there were quite a few leagues where people just dropped him, and if that's somehow happened in your league, take him with all your fab, get the best priority somehow, take him. Steve, I know you're going to talk Alan Lazard, so just go.
I just want to say that Alan Lazard wasn't in this doc before I logged on today, and now he's there somehow. So I'm saying buy Alan Lazard. Devontae Adams hasn't been able to stay healthy for the past couple of years, the last 2 years. So he actually is questionable already for the next game, and he was hurt in the previous game. Buy your Alan Lazards because this guy's going to ball out, because I already called this Aaron Rodgers bounce back year, and it's happening. So Alan Lazard. Colin?
I'm going to go with Mr. DJ Chark. The guy is young. He's great. He's caught every ball that's went his way. He's a 4th target option right now for Minshew through the 2 games. But if you watched the actual highlights of his catches, they've been elite catches. He's been in double coverage. He's made some great catches. And in a half PPR, back-to-back weeks, 10 points. So I mean, he's playable. He's a flex play still. And I think he'll have a breakout. He's going to break out. That guy's very, very good. And Minshew's a very good player. So I think Minshew is really balling out. He is worth that first overall pick that Steven used on him in one of our leagues. And, I think he'll eventually he'll be the guy. I don't think Keelan, Cole keep that going. And I don't think they're going to be like, oh, Tyler Eifert, he's our guy. No, it's Chark, and he's elite. And just a couple of catches, I'm just like, wow, this guy's so good. It was a double coverage, jumped up and caught the ball. It was just a really good catch. And I think everything that's thrown his way so far has been caught. So he's going to bounce back big, and I think he's worth a buy low right now. Did you guys have any more thoughts?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, let's move on to the absolute stinker section. So I'll just jump in this one right away. Austin Hooper, through 2 games, 4 catches. on 6 targets, 37 receiving yards, and 0 touchdowns. The guy is not worth a fantasy hold. He's not going to be a tight end relevant. He's not going to be a top 10 tight end like before. And that's nothing against him as a player, like catching wise. It's just the way the Browns run their offense now. He's a great pass blocker. He's doing that job very well, which is what they picked him up for. So I'm excited to see. I just don't see the point of holding him anymore. I feel like you just drop into the waivers, and I don't think you'll look back in shame with that because I don't think he's going to be very relevant. He might have a couple games here and there, like through the season, maybe have a couple, like maybe touchdown games, but I don't think he's going to be like that tight end one like he was like the last couple of years with the Falcons. Mike?
I mean, it pains me to say this because he's such a fun player, but Rob Gronkowski stinks. He probably should have stayed retired. Probably should have let OJ Howard take over the team. Yeah, I'm just gonna. He's had 4 targets. He's caught 2 balls, 11 yards. And Tom hates him. Tom only loves Fournette. They keep posting videos of each other. And I'm going to pass it on to Steve because this stinks to talk about.
You don't like Gronk so far this year? I think he's been great.
He stinks.
Okay, fair enough. I really don't have anybody I think stinks because I think it's too early in the season. You guys are pretty mean. So I wrote Nick Chubb in here to see if Colin would get fired up. But he actually just went along with the joke and said stuff about like Baker likes to do stuff to him in the dressing room. So,
hey, well, actually, the last couple people we've talked about on here, they've absolutely balled out. So that's what I'm hoping happens to Gronk. Maybe, hopefully.
I'm gonna go.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say drop.
I got one here.
I'm gonna say drop Taysom Hill.
Yeah, that's fair.
Why do you have him?
He's owned it. He's owned in like 10% of leagues.
That's weird.
Jesus Christ.
Drop him.
Steven, how pumped are you when Jameis takes over and you get to play him in Dynasty?
Hey, I grabbed him because I think Drew Brees is going to get hurt and Jameis is going to be phenomenal. So I do own Jameis in a Dynasty league. Let's go.
Brees does look hurt with that fucking arm. Guy can't throw the ball past 7 yards.
Brutal.
Just before we close out this show, I just want to say honorable mentions. We talked about him a little bit. Chase Claypool looks really good and he's big. They call him the Mapletron because he's supposed to be the Megatron. Just big guy. I know it's not a great name, but he's Canadian, and we're a Canadian podcast for football, so definitely had to give him a quick shout out. And also another Canadian, N'Keal Harry, also looked pretty good this past week with the Patriots. And if Edelman gets hurt, which he normally does, that's a couple games a year, I think he could have some pretty relevant weeks. This past week I think he had 8 catches as well. So Cam's been slinging that laser. And hopefully N'Keal continues the ball out. We got to love our Canadians on this show. So any more thoughts, guys, before we close this one out?
Not really. I mean, I'm just so depressed from all the injuries. I lost CMC. So, yeah, Steve, you got anything?
I lost Saquon, unfortunately. But big matchup. Mike and I are playing each other twice in 2 different leagues this week, so we definitely have some money on the go here. Maybe some pints too.
What's our records? Because I'm sitting at 6-2. Steve?
6-4. Colin, what's your record so far? And include our crappy 1 league.
1-5.
Let's go.
By the way, the guy rejected the offer, said he's 0-2 and he's not feeling it's the best position to give up draft picks. But he's like, not terrible value. But he said not terrible value because, but he doesn't know how long Robinson will be effective. So when he listens to this podcast, he'll know because we kind of talked about James Robinson like a few minutes ago. But whatever.
Hey, I also
see if you can.
I also wanted to bring up.
You can get a pick from him for just Robinson. Like get a first for just Robinson.
I'll ask right now. Well, no.
I also wanted to bring up that Mike and I are on this pod twice a week, and Colin's only on here once a week, and that's probably why he stinks at fantasy football. So,
yeah, definitely. I think we're the best, and that guy stinks.
Yeah, so
we should have had him in this segment.
Yeah, drop Colin.
Like
I do stink. Yeah, drop me from this podcast.
If you got him on your roster, drop him.
Man, I think I'll be back 2 times a week moving forward. Some big things coming my way, so
Big
I'll keep you posted.
He got fired.
Big things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got fired. This is my full-time job now, guys.
Okay, take us out.
All right. I want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast. I know it's a little lanky one, but we'll go into our outro. So follow us at Twitter at day1football, and then on Instagram, day with the word spelled out 1football. And subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on all platforms you listen to, and also on YouTube as well. Mike's been actually posting finally, so that's kind of nice of Mike.
My computer's not dying anymore. Let's go.
Which is huge. You buy a new one?
No, it's still the same crappy one that I got free with school. So,
well, it's getting winter time, so it's probably like it's not as hot anymore.
Yeah, probably it.
Yeah, there you go. Because Canada, we got igloos up here and stuff.
For all you air's getting crisp.
Yes, weather. It's still though. Steven's gonna wear shorts and sandals outside when it's snowing.
Of course,
like back in college.
Of course.
All right, let's close this one out. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll be back Thursday with the week 3 matchups and a Colts fan as well.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye, guys.
Down a coffee in the lobby just to check it all out. All the cool cats from the alley seem to rally back out, but my heart, my mind, my liver has had quite